What's happening, everybody? On today's show, the latest news going on around the conference. We are heading into SEC Week 5. We'll give you all the latest news you need to know. Also, our conversation with the great Marty Smith as he has a new book out. And we'll give you our SEC Week 5 picks heading into the weekend. Locked on SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Plenty of stuff to get into. Let's do it. Let's jump into it. Let's go around the conference.
Boots out to the right. Intercepted. Takes the handoff. What a catch.
Around the conference.
And we start over at Ole Miss as the Rebels are getting ready to host LSU, and Lane Kiffin talking with the media this week, talking about the versatile Harold Perkins, and Lane Kiffin joking about what LSU's role for the linebacker is after their loss in Week 1 to Florida State. Tigers gave Harold Perkins more freedom on that defense. Lane Kiffin said, I don't know if they've talked about it. It looks like they tried to play him like a normal linebacker Week 1, like a boundary will linebacker. But it looks like they scratched that after the Florida State game, went back to last year's plan, putting him out there and letting him make some plays, letting him make a few calls. Yeah, I wish they would put him back in there. Harold Perkins having a nice season with a couple of sacks, a couple forced fumbles, and the Rebels looking to avenge that game last year where they just completely shut down the second half at LSU, losing 45-20. Ole Miss coming off that 24-10 loss to Alabama in Tuscaloosa. And a lot of things on the line here. Ole Miss, they don't want to fall out of the SEC West race this quickly with Ole Miss losing to Alabama. The Rebels need a win to stay in the SEC West race, and LSU looking to stay perfect in conference play. Alyssa Lang and Chris Doring on the SEC Network breaking down the implications of this game. And Alyssa Lang saying for LSU, if they want to continue to prove that they're the dominant team in the West, they got to get this win over Ole Miss. If Ole Miss wants to stay in the West chase at all, they've got to get this win. Chris Doring saying the same thing. He said it's an effective lose, leave town kind of feel to it. I think for Ole Miss, if you lose this game, you got 2 losses in the West, you're done, and your hopes to get the SEC title game for the first time in your program's history are out the window. Now, Lane Kiffin addressing the departure of tight end Michael Trigg this week. Pretty bluntly, he said, quote, we wish him nothing but the best. That's it. We wish him nothing but the best, and he's not part of our program, and that's it. Trigg had been previously disciplined by Ole Miss, missing the first half of the Week 1 game against Mercer, but the former USC tight end dealt with some injury and off-the-field issues and no longer part of the program there at Ole Miss. Meanwhile, over at Texas A&M, they picked up a big-time recruit, 5-star athlete Terry Bussey, committing to the Aggies on Thursday evening. 5'10", 180 pounds, top 20 recruit for the class of 2024. Bussey's competed in track and field, also played basketball and baseball throughout his college career. He's a big-time athlete, number 19 overall player in the country, the number 2 athlete nationally, and he's rated as the number 5 player from the state of Texas, giving the Aggies another big in-state recruit. And Texas A&M now holds the number 3 recruiting class for the class of 2024. Big-time 5-star for the Aggies. And Jimbo Fisher confirmed this week that Connor Wegman most likely to miss the remainder of the season. Jimbo saying, like I said at the press conference, thought everything was fine. He was having some pain. We x-rayed him, MRI'd him, didn't show anything, but thought it was a normal sprain. He had some pains, got a CAT scan that showed some things that they're going to have to go in there and fix and get that done. So most likely going to be out the rest of the way. Connor Wegman was just shy of 1,000 yards passing on the season, 8 touchdowns, 2 picks. With Wegman not going to miss the rest of the way, it's going to be Max Johnson. See how Max Johnson responds. Had a nice second half against Auburn this past week. Jimbo saying, we feel very confident, Max. Came in, played great. Fortunately, we had to lose Connor for our football team, Like I said before, I think we have 2 starting quarterbacks and felt very good about that. So we'll have to move on, and that's where we're at. So Johnson going to get the start against Arkansas this coming weekend. Meanwhile, over at Mizzou, they are taking on Vanderbilt, looking to improve to a perfect 5-0. The Tigers will wear gold helmets with the Tiger logo, with white jerseys and pants with black numbers and gold trim. So that's going to be the jerseys they are wearing this weekend, taking on Vanderbilt. Meanwhile, over at Arkansas, they are getting ready for their matchup against the Texas A&M Aggies. Sam Pittman talking with the media this week saying, we would certainly use anything that we think would help us, would motivate us to win. A lot of guys have said you shouldn't need motivation. You always need as much motivation as you can. So certainly haven't used that yet, but there's some things we certainly could talk about. Razorbacks head coach Sam Pittman talking about, maybe using the revenge angle as motivation going up against the Aggies. Pittman going up against Bobby Petrino, who he has coached against before, so some familiarity there. Sam Pittman saying it's a series where the game is going to be close. Obviously, another trophy game, things of that nature. In all honesty, in these close games, we come up disappointed more times than not. We got to play with the same amount of passion we had last week against LSU, but play smarter. Now, Sam Pittman updating the status of running back Rocket Sanders this week, saying that feels good about maybe the chances of getting him back out there. He said, I'm as confident as I've been since week 1 against Western Carolina. I'll be lying to you if I told you I'm sure he's going to play. I feel better about his opportunity, but we still have to see how he recovers from yesterday, the limited reps he participated in, and go from there. But this week, I thought he was further ahead on Monday than what I thought he would be. Didn't swell up too bad. Give him a little less reps. We'll see where he's at later in the week, hoping he can play. So we'll see if Rocket Sanders can get back out there against Texas A&M. Meanwhile, over at Alabama, Nick Saban talking with the media this week, discussing a number of topics, including status of his linebacker Deontay Lawson and offensive lineman Terrence Ferguson. He said both guys were unable to practice earlier in this week, so that'll put them in the category as very questionable. Lawson dealing with a sprained ankle, and he said obviously the depth of that position is going to become critical for us if Deontay cannot go. So we'll keep working with the guys back there, try to get them ready to work this week. So far, Lawson, 26 tackles, 2 sacks, 3.5 tackles for a loss. He's been a big-time playmaker. Alabama and Mississippi State set for an 8 p.m. Central kickoff Saturday from Davis-Wade Stadium. Over at Florida, they're getting ready for their big road trip to Kentucky this weekend. A pair of key players on offense back in the starting lineup. Freshman wide receiver Trey Wilson left the Tennessee game with a collarbone injury, did not play against Charlotte last week. And starting center Kingsley Agwakin, he missed 3 of the last 4 contests with injury. Both players listed as starters for this game. So we'll see if both those guys are out there. Meanwhile, Scooby Williams making a big impact on the defense for Florida. Billy Napier raving about him this week, said he has been, quote, awesome, making the transition from an outside pass rusher in high school to a stacked linebacker. Said obviously you see the game differently when you're on the edge, kind of viewing the game out of one eye, and all of a sudden moving to stacked linebacker, you got to see it with both eyes. And Scooby has done a great job. He said I've been very pleased with him. Over at Auburn, Charles Barkley making his appearance on the next round, talking about the matchup against Georgia. And Barkley saying, look, I hate Alabama. It's a different animal. You can't have that much hate in your heart. Number one, I really don't hate Alabama. I just want to beat them. I hate their fans because they're obnoxious. They lost 2 games last year, and it was like, kill us now. That's the end of the world. And after that, they lost to Texas this year. It was like, oh, my God, you got the greatest coach ever. They're a bunch of ungrateful brats. That's the only thing I hate about Alabama. So they're a great program. Got a lot of friends that played there. Much love and respect I have for Coach Saban, but I just hate their fans because they're obnoxious and entitled. Now, as far as this matchup against Georgia, Charles Barkley saying, look, if y'all going to be down there baptizing people, please pray for better quarterback play at Auburn. He said, let's get these 3 quarterbacks, baptize them, and maybe the Lord can make them play better, because the one thing you can't do as a coach, you can't have your quarterback playing scared or looking over his shoulder. You can't play 3 quarterbacks. You can't play 2 quarterbacks. That's the one position in sports, but the one thing you have as a player is confidence in yourself. You have to make good plays. If you're scared to make bad plays, you can't make good ones. So Charles Barkley kind of telling it like it is. And look, Hugh Freeze understands the pressure. He went on for some time about needing to put Peyton Thorne in better situations this week. He has had a rough start to the season, and Hugh Freeze addressing some of those needs. He said, look, when we're asked to be psychologists along with being a coach, we had a good meeting this week with Peyton. And obviously I feel like there's things that our staff has let him down on also. And some of it's him, and he knows that, and he owns it, but I promised him we would do a better job coaching him and preparing him. So we got to see a much better output from Peyton Thorne and that Auburn offense going into this Georgia game. Over in South Carolina, Shane Beamer getting ready for his game against Tennessee, and he said he wants to see more game-breaking plays from his special teams unit. We know Beamer ball, always going to be good on special teams this week. He said, I think we've been okay there. It's not what we expect around here. We haven't had as many game-breaking plays, if you will. We got a long punt return the other night, which was good. We haven't blocked any punts yet. Our return game on kickoff return, really haven't had a chance to get that going yet. So see if South Carolina can break out some big plays against Tennessee on special teams. Meanwhile, over at Tennessee, their offense kind of coming along. Josh Heupel says he likes what he's seen so far from his defense, especially some of his younger linebackers, players like Elijah Herring, Arian Carter, Caleb Herring. Josh Heupel saying it's a bright future there for some of the guys in that linebacker room. Against UTSA last week, Elijah Herring had a career-high 8 tackles. Josh Heupel saying, obviously, with the injury to Keenan Peely, Elijah has been thrust into even more action. He's handled it well and developed as a first-line player. So we'll see what he is able to do moving forward. Over at Georgia, SEC up the travel roster limit from 70 to 74 this year, which has helped out Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs. Kirby saying this week the SEC made it 74 this year. That has helped us tremendously. I think we met with our ADs and everybody lobbied. Some people lobbied for it to be more, some people less. But he believes having the roster at 74 for road games is huge as they head into their first road game of the season, heading into Auburn. He said there's a lot of things you can do to take more players because the home roster has 80. The visitors now have 74. That was a change. Got a couple guys down in a position, and you take more because of the risk of injury. So that's ultimately what it comes down to. One more note over at Texas A&M. We talked about Connor Weigman's going to miss the remainder of the season, and Jimbo Fisher talking about Max Johnson taking over. He says he's been a starter in this league, played a lot of football. He's 2-0 for us a year ago as a starter, and unfortunately got hurt. So we feel really comfortable with him going back in there. He said we're blessed to have Max Johnson. Feel very confident in him taking over. Meanwhile, over at Kentucky, Mitch Barnhart opening the floodgates for Kentucky fans earlier than usual. Fans can arrive at Kroger Field this Saturday as early as 7 a.m. Eastern for the game against Florida. This comes after Mark Stoops said he didn't doubt the people of Kentucky could wake up early and pound some beers. If Stoops wins on Saturday against Florida, that would mean 3 straight wins for Kentucky over the Florida Gators. The Kentucky faithful are sure to show up and show out. Devin Leary having a nice year so far. Kickoff noon Eastern on ESPN. Now, Mark Stoops said he's heard a lot about the win streak over Florida, and obviously he wants to keep that going, but the streak itself isn't necessarily the important part to him. He said it's about growing as a team and improving. He said if you go back to the very beginning when I got here, I didn't worry about the streak because I knew we just had to improve as a football team. If you go back and look at my quote 11 years ago, I probably said I can't be consumed with Florida, concerned about Florida until Kentucky gets better. Ultimately, they did get better. Ultimately, they did start winning against Florida. Let's see if they can keep this thing going. Another tidbit over at Mizzou, Eli Drinkwitz. Their team's ranked for the first time since 2019. They come into week 5 ranked at number 23. Eli Drinkwitz saying, honestly, had spent a ton of time thinking about it because rankings don't matter what you do this week. Our goal is just to keep winning. And they got a big task going to Vanderbilt. They can win this week. They will be perfect 5-0 going into the game against LSU next weekend, hosting LSU. And some people thinking maybe a chance for College Game Day to go to Como next week for LSU Mizzou. We'll see if that happens. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, our conversation with the great Marty Smith. That's coming your way in just a sec right here on Locked On SEC. First, I want to remind you guys this episode is presented to you by our friends over at Nutrafol. Look, you don't have to choose between better hair growth and your health. Nutrafol provides a whole body health approach for men that promotes healthier hair. No drugs, no compromises, just better hair. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement, clinically shown to improve your hair growth, visible thickness, and visible scalp coverage. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements use physician-formulated, natural, science-backed ingredients. Their drug-free patented technology provides consistent, reliable results without compromising your sexual health. Go to Nutrafol.com/men. Take their health wellness quiz. See where you are. Identify causes of your thinning hair. Nutrafol will give you a personalized plan for better hair health through their whole body wellness. Nutrafol supports healthy hair growth from within. They target root causes of thinning, such as stress, hormones, environment, nutrition, and so on and so forth, and it works. In a clinical study, 84% of men showed improvement in their hair after 6 months of taking Nutrafol's men's hair growth supplements. Take the first step to visibly thicker, healthier hair. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping. Just go to Nutrafol.com/men. Enter our promo code LOCKEDONCollege. Find out why over 4,000 healthcare pros recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com/men. Spell that out, Nutrafol.com/men. Enter promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That's Nutrafol.com/men. Promo code LOCKEDONCollege.
Rolling along here, and a pleasure to be joined by this guy. You know him, you love him, from ESPN, SEC Nation. The guy is all over the place. He's got a new book out called Sideline CEO, Leadership Principles from Championship Coaches. He is the great Marty Smith. Marty, a quick thought on, obviously, this book. I know you, a few years ago, you had Never Settle, which was more about your life and stories. Talk about Sideline CEO. What led you to want to write this book?
The impact of great leaders on my life, first of all, but I have the great blessing with my ESPN life to engage and learn from some of the greatest leaders of all time. And I wanted to be a vehicle to take all that tutelage and offer it to other people for their own daily walk. And I know for a fact that Sideline CEO will do that for you. I've injected so much of that wisdom into my daily walk, not only as a host and reporter, but as a husband and father. And it's Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney, Mac Brown, Roy Williams, Tom Izzo, Doc Rivers, Urban Meyer, Patty Gasso at the University of Oklahoma just won her 7th national championship. Kim Mulkey at LSU just won her 4th. It's a who's who. And they have shared so much vulnerable storytelling with me that people are going to get a lot out of it. We see them in a certain light, right? We see them yelling on the sideline or in a press conference where it's clinical or vanilla. This is a very vulnerable text, and people it's applicable in the boardroom, it's applicable in the locker room, it's applicable in your living room. And I hope you guys go buy it because there's so much in it that is so rich.
Yeah, I was going to ask that because, look, sports fans are going to check this out because they know you, they love hearing perspective from some of these other great coaches. Like Kentucky fans, they're going to be appealed by hearing from Coach Cal and all this. But it really is for folks who even aren't sports fans that are just looking for recipes for success in life. And so many of these, Marty, I was just reading, some of the bullet points, like communication. That's every field, man. If you're not communicating right, you're not succeeding.
That's right.
And the big one I deal with is delegating, man, because it's not that I don't like bossing people around, but man, I like doing when I need something done, I do it myself. It is so hard to delegate and be successful, but that's what the real leaders got to do.
Well, very well said, brother. And Kirby Smart told me in the pages there, Sideline CEO, he did not become a championship caliber coach and leader until he stopped micromanaging and started delegating. That's when it really started to click, because you're hiring these people to do a job. Let them do the job. And then if they don't, then you maybe step in and say, okay, we got to do a better job. Ultimately, you got to hire and fire. That's part of being a CEO. But I love what Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, I interviewed him in the book as well. And he said to me that there's an inclination among uber-driven, highly successful people that if it's not getting done the way you want it done, I'll just do it myself. But what happens? Here's what happens. That removes the macro view with all the different silos that the CEO has to live within, that suffers because you have to be in the nuance and granular detail of game planning, as it were. And these days, man, if you're a CEO, you have to worry about budgeting and human resources and crisis management and hiring, firing. It's just so much more than game planning. So I just felt like that. I'm glad you said that because that chapter is very interesting.
He is the great Marty Smith. Again, the new book is out now, Sideline CEO. And you and Ryan, it's so funny. Y'all are both great writers. I mean, Ryan's been doing it for so long, but I enjoyed your first book. I'm really getting excited about digging into this one. But, man, you guys work so well together. The Marty and McGee show, are you surprised it's still going this strong after this long?
I'd like to say next question, Chris, because we don't want our bosses to know that we're stealing their money here. We say that all the time, but we just laugh about it because how massive a blessing that a relationship and a friendship between two country boys has kind of become this thing. And it's funny, too, we're pretty particular about mentioning that, yes, we have a lot of fun and Florida Man and hillbilly headlines and nostalgia and talking about all the stuff we love. But we have the latitude to do the funny stuff because we get the serious stuff right. If there is a massive story in sport, one of the two of us or both of us is probably covering it for SportsCenter. So we also have that credibility of the reporting that comes with important journalism as well.
I wanted to ask you in that realm too, Marty. You do such a good job in so many of your feature pieces, your sit-down interviews. You guys had Lane Kiffin on the other day. I know you sat down with Jackson Dart last week. How does that? You've been doing this for so long. What's the process after that? Like, are you the one in there editing? Are you sending stuff back to Bristol? What's the process when you're putting a piece together nowadays? Because I'm sure in your early days you were doing it all. What are the resources like now at ESPN in helping you put stuff like that together?
I'm blessed with a great team. So it depends on the feature, but kind of the way it usually works is I do all the preparation with the questions in kind of unison with the producer that's assigned to that specific piece. We do the interview. We go home. The producer will look at all the content. I'll start writing the script. And then I start sort of playing tennis with the script with the producer. We finalize a script. We send it up the line to our bosses. They sign off on it after reading the entire interview. And then ultimately we start putting the edit together and the producer actually edits and puts it together. So it's a whole team effort.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's always good stuff left on the cutting room floor too. That's always the tough part, and editing stuff down
the worst part. Drives me crazy.
It's like, hey, but we only got 3 minutes, Marty. Like, 3 minutes, good Lord. But that's just part of the process. More importantly, who does your hair, Marty? Because it is always expertly lined up with the poof in the front. Who does your hair?
Yeah, it's the eighth wonder of the world. So going back to McGee a minute, the great misconception is that I spend all this time on my hair and he just shows up and rolls out of bed that way.
Right.
Couldn't be more inaccurate. I just take this stuff called American Crew Forming Cream. I put a little bit in my hand, I swoop, and I leave. McGee is like a hair dryer guy, a hair brush guy.
Wow.
Like, it's a whole thing with that cat. So that's the big misconception about Marty and McGee. Yes, but my hair is the eighth wonder of the world.
What question about the fame too? Because I know you were doing NASCAR years ago. I mean, you've done it all on the way up to where you are now, and obviously you're very recognizable. ESPN provides such a good platform with that, but I got to think it's a blessing and maybe a little bit of a curse, right? Like you can't go anywhere without people recognizing you. I got to think.
Well, it's a blessing is what it is. And if you look at it any other way, then you think a little too highly of yourself. The only time that it's ever an issue is like when you're having dinner with your family.
Yeah.
That's the only time it's ever an issue. But like, I'll tell you a funny story, bro. We were in Starkville, Mississippi a couple of weeks ago, and McGee and I were sitting at the end of the bar at the Walk-On's restaurant. So McGee's over here to my right, and he's engaged in some conversation with one of the referees about his book with his dad called Sidelines and Bloodlines. Great book. Go read it.
Good book. Yeah, I got it.
And meanwhile, I'm at the end of the bar. I took pictures with 5 different babies that ain't mine. So, yeah, it's a little different sometimes, but what a blessing. It's the blessing, Chris, is this. People welcome us into their home, man. They feel like they know us.
Yeah.
So we're very approachable, and that's a blessing.
Yeah, and I love that about Ryan too. I've gotten to know him at SEC Media Days over the years and all that. And I mean, he literally walks up and goes, "What's up, dude?" I'm like, "You don't know me, but it feels like I know you. It feels like you know me." So you guys are two of the most relatable guys in all of sports. And I hope everybody goes and checks out this book. Again, Sideline CEO, Leadership Principles from Championship Coaches. And again, I loved Never Settle, so can't wait to dive into this one, Marty. Thanks so much for the time, man. I know you're being pushed through the ringer right now, doing all the car wash stuff and hitting every show in America, so we really appreciate you taking some time, man.
Thank you so much for the platform, brother. I appreciate your spirit, and y'all have an awesome day.
All right, thanks, Marty. That is the great Marty Smith there of course, ESPN, SEC Nation, SEC Network. I mean, the guy's everywhere. He does it all, and we really appreciate Marty Smith for taking some time there. More Locked On SEC coming your way in just a sec.
Hey, this episode is presented to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Look, passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it is easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebay.com/motors. It's the eBay Guaranteed Fit, available to U.S. customers. Eligible items apply. Exclusions apply. eBay Motors. Go check them out today. All right, rolling along here, Locked On SEC. Our thanks again to Marty Smith. And we got to dive back into it because we got plenty of picks to get into. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. And let's do it. Without further ado, let's dive into it. We got some picks to make for SEC Week 5. And we jump into it. 7 games in the conference this weekend. And we start with the early one, Florida at Kentucky. Look, Devin Leary's been good so far. He's got a couple of interceptions. But I just think at home, I think Kroger Field, or as they call it, K. Roger Field, it's going to be rocking. I like Austin Armstrong. I like Florida. I think they're improved. But I think this one at home, I think Kentucky gets it done for a 3rd year in a row. Give me Kentucky minus the 1. Latest line from our friends over at FanDuel. We're going to ride Kentucky minus the 1 against Florida. I think Florida's still going to win some games this year. I just don't think they win this one. Next up, early game, Texas A&M versus Arkansas. It is the backup quarterback, Max Johnson, played very well in the second half against Auburn this past week. I just think this is a must-win for Kentucky and Sam Pitt, or rather Arkansas and Sam Pittman. KJ Jefferson, they lost to BYU at home. They lost to LSU on the road. They can't lose a 3rd straight game. If they do, this season is really going sideways. Give me Arkansas plus the 6. And if you really want to get spicy, I'll take Arkansas straight up. I think as good as Max Johnson played in the second half last week, I think he comes crashing back down to earth, doesn't play as well. I like Arkansas plus the 6 and Arkansas straight up over A&M. Next up, afternoon game, SEC CBS game of the week. It's Georgia at Auburn. It is the first road test for Carson Beck and company. I think this one's close at the half. I think Georgia doesn't play great in the first half. I think Auburn keeps it close. I think Jordan Hare is rocking. But I think in the second half, Georgia does what Georgia does. They pull away Dejon Edwards in that run game. I think they score a lot of points. Give me Georgia minus the 14 at Auburn. Again, if you want to do a first half line, I think Auburn maybe covers it at halftime. But Georgia pulls away in the second half, covers the 14. Next up, Mizzou. They'll have no problem at Vandy. We've been hearing all week A.J. Swan's going to be questionable. If they got to go with Kent Seals, I think Mizzou runs away with this one. They got the SEC leading rusher in Cody Schrader. They got a much improved quarterback in Brady Cook. I think Mizzou minus the 13.5. They win big and get ready for 5-0 Mizzou hosting LSU next weekend. South Carolina at Tennessee. I've gone back and forth in this one. I just think Spencer Rattler's playing so well. I think South Carolina keeps it within 12. So we'll take the game clocks plus the 12. But I like Tennessee to win. Joe Melton, I think, does enough. I think that run game does enough. Dylan Sampson's been running like crazy. Jabari Small, Jalen Wright. I think Tennessee wins, but I think they win something like 10, by 10, like a 31-21 type game. Give me South Carolina plus the 12. Spencer Rattler continues to put on a show with Xavier Legette. The nightcap, I got Alabama minus the 14.5 at Mississippi State. Again, another one I think where maybe the cowbells are clanging. I think maybe Will Rogers throws for some yards in this one. He did it last week, over 400 yards against South Carolina. All right, lastly, we'll take LSU minus the 2.5 at Ole Miss. I think that the Tigers will get it done against the Rebels. Look, LSU defensively, they've been okay, but I think they do enough against Ole Miss. I think LSU or Ole Miss's offense in a funk, trying to find their way running the football. I think LSU ekes out a close one in Oxford against the Ole Miss Rebels. Give me LSU minus the 2.5 against Ole Miss. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. We'll talk to you guys on Monday. Shout out to our everydayers coming back and checking us out every day. We'll talk to you guys on Monday. Come on right back here on Locked On SEC. We'll talk to you guys then.